Hello there, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today we're going to be talking about the Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa. And for that, I'm here in Lisbon in a very sunny day. Let's get on. Don't forget to download our free ebook addressing the 7 most common mistakes made by foreign citizens when applying to the Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa. We're going to be talking about pretty much everything related to the Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa. So for you to make the most out of this video, you're going to see different chapters addressing different content about the visa. For instance, if you know a lot about Portugal and you don't need to hear the reasons why Portugal is a major destination for digital nomads, you can simply skip this section and go straight to the ones that you are interested in. So naturally, the first question is, why Portugal as a destination for you as a digital nomad? The first reason is that Portugal is a developed nation with a very stable government and one of the safest countries in the world. As a country, part of the European Union, Portugal is the door for you to access 26 other nations that are part of the European Union. So when you get residency in Portugal, you actually have access to so many other different countries, cultures, and places for you to enjoy. In terms of safety, Portugal ranks consistently as one of the top 5 safest countries in the world. It doesn't get much better than that. Also, as a digital nomad, you want to make sure that you're going to have access to high-speed internet and plenty of technology to allow you to perform the best. And from that perspective, Portugal is also ranking really high because high-speed internets are available throughout Portugal. It does not matter if you pick in Porto, if you pick in Lisbon, if you pick in Algarve, high-speed internets are pretty much anywhere. Even from a US citizen perspective, this high-speed internet is going to be surprisingly good. Now, as a digital nomad, in Portugal, you also have access to all the countries in the European Union. If you are providing professional service to other countries, this may be helpful for you to access new markets. There is also the affordable cost of living. If you compare Portugal to the United States, to the United Kingdom, or to France, you're gonna see that prices in Portugal are gonna be lower, substantially lower across the board. Of course, some cities are going to be more affordable than others, but in general, Portugal is just a better deal than other countries. Finally, let's not forget, Portugal is an amazing, beautiful country. You have beaches, you have the countryside, you have scenery, you have the historic locations. There are so much for you to enjoy in Portugal. All right, if there are 5 things you should know about the Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa, what should be those 5 things? So the Portugal Digital Nomad Visa is also known as the D8 visa. This visa is available for digital nomads across the world, meaning citizens that are not already living in the European Union, for you to stay for potentially 1 year if you just want to try out Portugal, or several years depending on the type of application you're going to choose. This visa is going to be available for both freelancers and formal workers. For formal workers and freelancers, you cannot be working for a Portuguese client or company, of course. The concept here is that you're going to be living in Portugal while you're working for some type of entity or client abroad. Now, one of the downsides is that the Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa is going to require you to make at least 4 times the minimum monthly wage in Portugal. At the time of this filming, we are talking about 820 euros. So you should be making at least 3,280 euros to qualify as a digital nomad as of today. So finally, if you exceed 183 days in the country, you're gonna also trigger tax residency in Portugal. Let's talk about the requirements you need to meet to be able to enjoy this visa. The main requirement for you as an applicant, you should be at least 18 years old. You should be able to provide proof of stable income, meeting the minimum requirement of the 4 times the minimum wage valid in Portugal at the time of application. As we said, as of today, we're talking about 3,280 euros per month that you're gonna prove through a bunch of documents, including the last 3 bank statements, showing that you are making at least this amount. A clean criminal record is a must for you to apply and secure a visa in Portugal. If you have a single misdemeanor and that's something you can explain through the paperwork, that's still a chance that you're gonna get the visa. But for felonies and major situations such as a sex or a violent crime, you most probably won't be able to secure this visa. Another requirement is for you to secure accommodation in Portugal for at least 12 months. You can prove accommodation through a rental agreement or if you already have a property in Portugal. Health insurance covering at least 12 months in Portugal, it's another must. There is something you don't usually hear out there that is also very important for your application, which is the letter of intent. In this letter of intent, you're gonna explain why you are a good match, not only for a digital nomad visa, but more importantly for Portugal. In addition to the minimum amount per month, you also gonna need to show savings in a certain amount to prove to the Portuguese immigration that you can keep yourself in the country if something goes wrong with your current employment. You also need the Portuguese tax ID known as NIF. There are many other requirements for this visa, and unfortunately, some of the requirements, they are not gonna be on the official lists out there. You're gonna see one of our own lists in the description below. Now, one of the requirements is that you prove that you are able to work remotely. You could do that through an employment contract. Let's say if you have a formal employment in the United States, for instance, you can show your employment contract. And for this employment contract, it is important that the Portuguese immigration can tell that you can perform your activities remotely. If you are a freelancer working for several clients, your service agreements with your clients can also be used. If you are a business owner, Portugal also makes easy for you to apply. You would need paperwork to show your business ownership and also that your business is providing services to other people. There should be some type of evidence showing that the nature of the work you do is compatible with a digital nomad visa. Now let's talk about the application process. One thing that is extremely important for you to factor into your planning is going to be the organization and collection of documents. Most people are concerned only with how long the immigration is going to take to review your paperwork. But to assemble a solid application takes time, and in our experience, it's going to take you 2 months for you to gather, collect, and prepare a very strong application. After you collect your documents, ideally, you would have this reviewed by a professional consultant or an attorney. After the paperwork is reviewed and ready to be submitted, then you're gonna need to schedule an appointment with the Portuguese immigration. How you're gonna schedule is gonna depend on where you are. In some countries, you're gonna be dealing directly with the Portuguese consulate, while in other countries, you're gonna be dealing with an entity called VFS. In the United States, for instance, most states are going to be represented by VFS while still connected to a Portuguese consulate. Some states, interesting enough, are not going to be represented by VFS, and if you are based in that particular state, you're going to be able to deal directly with the Portuguese consulate. New Jersey, for instance. So after you schedule the appointment, it is time for you to make sure you have everything you need for the appointment. Important to note that Portugal immigration does change often, and the rules that you're gonna need to follow may change throughout your application process. The Portuguese immigration says very clearly that even though there is a somewhat expected list of documents for you to present, they are free to ask for whatever they think it's required for your specific situation. Just like everything else in immigration, there is never a guarantee that you're gonna secure the visa. But again, the better your preparation for the paperwork, the better financials you present, the higher the chances you're gonna have for approval. After your application is in and you attended the appointment, your paperwork is gonna take between 60 to 90 days to be reviewed. And again, there is always the possibility of new documentation being requested. After the review, you're hopefully approved, and that's when you're gonna get your visa stamped on your passport. After you get your passport, you have 120 days to enter Portugal for up to 2 times. After you are in Portugal, there's gonna be a second stage in your journey. After you are in Portugal, you're gonna need to apply for the residency itself based on the visa that you secured back home. You're gonna do that through an agency called AIMA, A-I-M-A. And unfortunately, the Portuguese immigration is currently overwhelmed given the number of people trying to achieve this visa, and you are gonna need some type of help to schedule the appointment and attend the appointment. So now let's talk about costs. The government fees in total are not going to exceed 350 euros, covering both the visa and the residency application in Portugal. Private health insurance is going to usually cost you between 500 to 1,000 euros for the first year of coverage, which again, it's a requirement. Lawyer fees are going to range from 500 euros to 2,000 euros, depending on the level of service you're going to receive and the reputation of the firm that you're picking. Travel costs are going to be usually around 800 euros. It depends on where you're coming from. Translations and apostilles for the documents that require so are going to range between 500 to 700 euros, and this is going to depend on the country in which you are applying. Important to note that you still need a reserve that's going to depend on the specific of your case. Now let's talk about the family reunification visa. Whenever you secure the Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa, this is going to give you access to bring family members with you, more specifically a spouse and children. There is also the possibility of bringing certain individuals, such as parents over the age of 65, who are financially dependent on you. Just remember that for each family member, the amount of savings that you need is gonna increase automatically. The application for the family reunification visa may be filed at the time of filing your digital nomad visa or later on. Now let's talk about some of the downsides of the Portuguese digital nomad visa, also known as D8. If you stay in Portugal for over 183 days, you're going to become a tax resident. The digital nomad visa does not trigger tax residency by itself. However, if you're staying continuously in Portugal, of course, you're going to exceed the 183 days and you're going to trigger the tax residency. Another possibility is that you may need to collect Social Security in Portugal as well. Usually, this is money that you're going to be able to recover later on, and you can even take advantage of if something happens to you during the stay in Portugal. Another downside is the minimum required amount of 3,280 euros as of today. And at this time, Brazil, for instance, is going to require only 1,500 euros, which is way less than half what you're going to need to qualify for the Portugal Digital Nomad. Another requirement is that you show a substantial reserve of funds when applying for the visa. Again, comparing to the Brazil one, if you have the required income, guess what? You don't need to show a reserve. Finally, you cannot apply for the D8 visa, meaning the Digital Nomad visa, if you are physically in Portugal. In Brazil, you can, but not in Portugal. So I hope you liked these tips. Don't forget to download our ebook, The 7 Most Common Mistakes Made by Foreign Citizens When Applying for the D8 Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa. Let me know your opinion on this visa in the comment section below and follow us for more tips.